everyone. I am finally back to recording. It's been a bit since I've recorded a chapter, so I am so sorry if my voices aren't as consistent as they should be. I'm gonna really try to be more consistent with this. I just want to say a big thank you to the author of Perfect Sun, that one guy with that one ship. They've been absolutely amazing in letting me read this story and just I don't know how to explain how honestly grateful I am to them. And I know I've said it already, but it's just crazy. I don't know, I don't think it's for some people a big deal, but to me, just knowing that an author is so on board and willing to support is amazing. And honestly, just I can't think of a better way to say thank you. So yeah. And also hello to anybody who came from their blog or their story directly. I really hope I can do this justice. It's just absolutely amazing. I know that I'm reading this out loud as I read it, and for some people that might be a little weird because you should be reading the story before you actually decide to podfic it. But I don't know, for me, I feel like I want to be in the same mindset as the reader and experiencing everything for the first time just like everyone else. I don't know, I feel like that adds to the experience. But anyway, I've been rambling too long, so I'm just gonna get with it. I hope you enjoy. Perfect Sun by That One Guy with That One Ship. Read by Munchin on Mochiko. Chapter 3. Broken Mirror. Sun choked on the breath of life. He coughed and heaved, quickly shaking off the grip of oblivion. It had taken a lot to wake him up, and he'd need to go back to sleep. He knew where he was, had no illusions about his location this time. His now green eyes stared straight ahead blankly at an equally blank white wall with a single window that displayed nothing. Wherever he was on Paradise, maybe in some tucked-away medical ward, maybe in the mansion, the minimalist style and color still infected the place, made it impersonal, clinical. Again, he tried to escape. Still strapped down. No chance. Not that he'd know of what to do if he did escape. What would Lily and Gladian do if they saw him now, their clone in all but shape? First to do was to become accustomed to his new body. He was still him, but he wasn't himself. Once he'd come to terms with that, he'd have a chance again. Thinking back, he'd almost broken whenever it was Lucine who showed him his new face. He had to be more resilient. All these thoughts were conceived and processed in the time it took him to look right and see Lucine by his side again. His helpless feeling returned, and all previous building strength vanished from his body. "Son," she cooed. Sun didn't respond, justifiably feeling rather sorry for himself. Tears began to shine in his eyes. Resisting the act of crying, he blinked and cleared his throat, gritting his teeth. "Why me?" he finally said. "Because, son, you're important," she whispered. "You're special." He could feel that she wanted to touch him, but was restraining herself. Only barely. It made his stomach churn, knowing that she was likely milliseconds away from putting his hands all over him at any time. He swallowed a lump in his throat that formed upon thinking that maybe she already had while he was unconscious. I don't understand," His voice shook with repressed emotions, fear at the foe. Why am I? My children. They both gravitated towards you, and they are very... She paused, resisting the urge to fly off the handle. Difficult to please. Just because I know Lily... Don't. Lucine interrupted. Don't mention her name. I know what my children are called, thank you very much. Son lay further back and shut his eyes. Sure. He couldn't help but be a little sarcastic. He had to find some way to push back against her and refuse her advances. You kids all have the same attitude, Lucine murmured with amusement. Not to worry, son. You'll be perfect soon. What are you going to do to me? Son asked. His voice was bored, hiding all his concern, all his terror. Whatever the answer was, he didn't want to hear it. What's the plan? Lucine observed him with confusion. Isn't it obvious? Look at you. She smiled. Why don't I... She began with an almost teasing tone that made it sound like she was giving him the best present he could ever ask for, leaning out of sight briefly. Show you again. She had the mirror that revealed his new face to him for the first time. No. Son panicked. He felt his grip on sanity slip at the threat of being shown what he was again. No, don't, he pleaded, trying to get up with no results. No. Shh. Lucine reached out to him, putting the reflective surface of the mirror face down over his torso. Calm down, my sweet child. Calm down. Taking his shoulders, Lucine pushed him back onto the bed. Think about it, son. You are perfect now. The last 4 words were a thinly concealed threat. I never asked for this, he growled. I never wanted this. Lucine broke eye contact and leaned away, perturbed by Son's resistance. Hiding her scowl, not that he was even looking for it, she took the mirror off his bedsheets and looked into it herself. Perfection gazed back. Why couldn't he appreciate that? Everything was buzzing suddenly, synthetic noise in her head. Anger blazed through her veins. You never wanted... She threw the mirror at the wall, where the surface shattered. This... Lucine gestured to herself. You never wanted perfection? You never wanted to be looked after and loved? And Son was wide-eyed and shrinking into his bed, leaning as far away from the psychotic woman as possible. The president of the foundation was picking up the pieces of the mirror already. I gave you this! She held up the largest shard, allowing the others to fall through her fingers. One piece sliced through the palm of her hand. Unflinching, she marched to Son and grasped the back of his neck, forcing him to stare into it. Look! She leaned in beside him so that the reflection displayed them both. Look at us, Son! Son was shell-shocked. Stop it! He tried to squirm free of her hold, watching his own expressions change in exertion and fear only inspired more in him. Let go! Let me go! He watched himself say the words, watched his green eyes widen and inhaled to scream and scream. Lucine, still in a blind rage, reversed her grip on his throat and started choking him. Son couldn't try to force her off of him. At first he wriggled and squirmed, then realized this was his chance to die without becoming corrupted. He lay still and let her choke him, hoping he would die before she saw sense. She held up the shard as an impromptu weapon and went to thrust it down into his neck. Son braced for the end. Nothing happened. Lucine was frozen in place. She looked horrified. The fragment fell to the floor with a clink. The pressure on Son's throat vanished, and the same hand that had been causing it now caressed his face, smearing it with the blood from the cut on her hand. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Son. The sounds of him coughing were lost on her ears. "I'm so sorry." Taking his head gently in her hands, she leaned him against her chest and stroked his hair, crouching beside the bed. I shouldn't have woken you up. I'm sorry. It should only be a week or so, son. Then this will all be over." The smell of her hair was inebriating to Son, but he stayed focused on what he had to do to get away, and it'd be helpful to know what would happen if he didn't, even if the information would be disturbing. "You didn't answer my question," Son managed to choke out. What do you want with me?" He wasn't pulling away from her embrace. Lucine noticed, and she smiled. "I don't want anything with you. I want you." Her finger played at his lips. The phrase may have been unintentionally predatory, or maybe it was completely intentional. Son wouldn't have known. "You'll understand when the time comes." Son gave into her again. "I will," he muttered. "I will." For a moment, his brain rapidly processed the information. Mood swings, an emotional outburst, followed by physical violence, his mind catalogued. He was nothing if not adaptive. It was Lucine's method, so to speak. He needed to either avoid causing these outbursts or be ready for them. It was like learning from the Rom-Tom decks. There wasn't much time left to get away, and not many more mistakes he could make without slipping off the metaphorical path and falling into the pit of insanity on his left, or the maw of Lucine's rage on his right. "I'm so sorry, Lucine." "Son, you will call me Mother. You've already done it once." Son knew better than to hesitate. "I'm sorry, Mother. I appreciate that." He forced himself to speak the words she wanted to hear. "I appreciate the gift I've been given." The hug became tighter. "Thank you, son. I know you understand."
Mother," he corrected himself. "Put me back to sleep until I can be perfect."
His tone was childish, dependent, an elaborate act. He hoped that in his obedience she'd want to wake him again, that she would do so, and that he would be allowed to move around. Then maybe he could make a break for it. The only issue was if she did exactly as he requested. "Oh, my sweet son, of course, I shouldn't have woken you." She held on to him, weakened, as she ran her hand through his hair yet again. "Here," she said, and lay him back down tenderly. Son's throat was still too tight, and he choked on his breath again. "Close your eyes, my dear." Son felt something indiscreet. Then he was gone again, oblivion reaching out to him and dragging him below the surface. Lucine had some ruminating to do. She had tried to hurt Son. He wasn't like Gladian or Lily. He was different. Coming to terms with the fact that she hadn't changed at all this far was difficult. My perfect boy," she cried. She was laying on the cold floor of her office, curled up in a ball, arms around her knees. No sooner had she retreated to the privacy of her office than she had dropped down and lay prone. Many ideas had circulated since then. Bringing back Lily and Gladian sooner rather than later was one such idea. Keeping them unawares, Son still lived, and exhausting her horrific habits on the two who had proven themselves unworthy of her love. Another idea was asking if the technology Faba was working on could be used to solve her issues. But she didn't trust him for one instant with her brain. Faba would see her as a raving lunatic given the opportunity. She kept the option in her head. Perhaps she could perform the surgery herself, somehow. The last option she had was trying to master the urges herself. It hadn't worked so far. She had to keep herself away from Sun. While his body may have been perfect, his mind was not, and he was still deluded from time to time. Flashes of herself nearly stabbing him and tearing his neck apart made her feel nauseous. The cut on her hand had gone ignored, and she was aware of a wide bloodstain spreading across her leggings where she was holding her knees. I have to distract myself, she thought. She pushed herself back up, spreading blood on the tiles and setting about bandaging the cut in the mansion bathroom. The imperfection on her skin could be covered, but it'd take time to heal. Sun's physical imperfections had been similarly covered, or rather erased entirely. His mental imperfections would take time to be healed. She wound the fabric over her palm slowly and methodically, trying to focus entirely on the simple task. Fresh air, she muttered to herself, opening and closing her hand, feeling the bandage stretch as the wound breathed. Fresh air. She strode outside, trying to keep her head held high. She didn't know where she was going or what she was doing. She switched to autopilot. Talk to employees, smile, pet the Pokemon, wave, look strong. She was only really self-aware in small bursts. The conversation with employees about catch and release schedules, greeting tourists in the atrium, and in the generalist wing of the Pokemon conversation area, the only area open to visitors. On the upper floor, she looked out to her mansion where Sun rested, in one of the spare rooms, alone, waiting to see the world again with a new perspective. Put me back to sleep until I can be perfect. He had wanted it. He wasn't like Lily or Gladian. He knew what was good and what was not. Sun, she whispered. Sun, Lily, Gladian. Firmly closing her eyes, she continued. Sun, Lily, Gladian. Sun, Lily, Gladian. Sun, Lily, Gladian. The handrail she clung to was thankfully unrelenting. Her grip was like a vice. Sun, Lily, Gladian. Both hands squeezed the white bar tightly, her knuckles turning just as white as the rail. Sun, my perfect boy. The other two she didn't care about. She had Guzma working on bringing them back, but that was only so that they could see what Sun had become, not for her to try and get through to them again. I have what I want, she hissed, as if reversing a line, imagining Gladian's rebellious expression, Lily's lack of eye contact as she fiddled with her dress. I have what I want, so I don't need you anymore. You can run off. You can go wherever. I don't care. Or you can stay. Try to make my perfect boy ugly again. It won't work. She let go of the railing. So do what you want. But you hurt my boy. And if you think I hurt you before, you won't have seen anything yet. Okay, that was chapter 3. I don't think I did too bad, but this is pre-editing me, so we'll see. I honestly kind of forgot how, fucked up in a good way this story is, and I love it so much. And it's just this bitch saying that Sun is delusional when she's the delusional one. It's just the best. It's just the best. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. I'm gonna try to record another chapter today too, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll release them both at the same time. Maybe I won't. You'll know. Anyway, bye.